That's just something I've been kind of thinking about lately. Like, are we actually manifesting their reality? Their dystopian future that they want.
I think it does. I think that actual film is extraordinary. If you've not seen it, came out a number of years ago. Children's film, Pixar, but it is actually an extraordinary it is an extraordinary movie because it's about some creatures who live in a parallel universe who induce fear in the human population by coming through portals, and they get energy from that. I actually think definitely, Michael, definitely that's exactly what's going on. And everything in our society, everything in our media, everything in our news, everything, all the current affairs that happen in the world seem to be geared towards that. They seem to be focused on that objective of making us scared. I mean, you could argue, and some people will argue, well, that's just the way the world is. That's the way the world happens. But sure, bad things happen in this world. There are natural disasters, there are wars, there are catastrophes, there are economic problems and things like that. But the way they are portrayed in the news, the way they are presented to us, seems to be deliberately intended to make us react in a certain way to these events. If they wanted to, they could easily present a more optimistic picture of these natural, inadvertent events, which would then make us feel better about them and make us feel more positive about them, which I think would help alleviate them. But instead, their objective seems to be to make us as depressed and frightened as possible whenever these things happen. Even the things they don't create, even the things that just happen. And of course, they do create things which make us more depressed and miserable and insecure, and everything's about that. So why do they do that? Why do they want us to be as frightened, as pessimistic, as insecure, and as fearful for the future as possible? Why do they want us to have a vision of the future which is so bleak? There has to be some kind of purpose behind it. I think it can't just be, well, that's just the way they're like. They're just a bunch of miserable sods,
Mm-hmm.
No, because there are happy people and optimistic people who could get jobs in the media, but they don't. It's something to think about, isn't it? And I reckon, as in Mark's book, they set up this terrorist attack, a false flag terrorist attack in Oxford, where I live, actually, and in the story, the intrepid heroes have to decode the messages that the bad guys are putting in there to prepare for it. Which they're putting these messages in there for the reasons we've just discussed, but the good guys decode them to the point where they can actually foil the terrorist attack altogether. And I suppose that's a challenge. That's one of the challenges we face. I mean, if we're in that situation, we detect these things beforehand, or we can simply avoid. We can prevent our spirit being broken. I think that's it. We have to. It's difficult, I know, but we have to maintain a level of. We have to prevent our spirit being broken, which
maybe that's what they want. Ben, is they want, if we're in a lower vibrational frequency, we're in a lower. Maybe this is just one variable, one ornament on the Christmas tree of tyranny. That they want our frequency lowered, our vibration, because maybe we're more hackable. Maybe these certain players on the global stage, they are in communication with these interdimensional entities or whatever, this malevolent force. It could be archons, and I think it's something to do with the soul, the spirit, the essence of us, what makes us human. They want to keep us from our highest and truest potential,
Yeah, definitely.
Because they know that we have the power to create worlds, to build the perfect world that, for our grandchildren to live in and prosper, but instead it's like they're just feeding on the system that they're manufacturing and creating. But despite, like you said, why? Like, yes, that's probably going on, but the reason is why. I think one of the whys is something with a vibrational frequency, the frequencies that we emit from all the chaos magic that they bring into the world. so that maybe it makes us more hackable. If we're on a higher vibrational field frequency, we're not as hackable, maybe. But then what do you mean by hackable? Nigel Kerner believed it's something to do with the souls, that they need the soul. He think it was the grays. I don't know what it is. It could be something even more darker. I don't know, but it's something with the soul, the spirit, the essence of us that they want.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, Aleister Crowley had encounters with the being that he called Lamb, which he drew a picture of it. It looks very much like a grey. But I think when we are in a depressed and demoralized state of mind, we are what you would call hackable.
Become a member on Patreon to watch the ad-free video version of this interview. The link is in the description.
Beyond the Forbidden.
Ben Emlyn Jones, welcome to Beyond Forbidden, man.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be on the show. It's great. I've subbed to your channel as well. I've watched a couple of your shows. I can't say I've watched every single one, but then there's so much out there,
I have a lot of things unlisted. I have a lot of things unlisted because I'm trying to build up the Rumble channel. Because man, I've been shadow banned to hell on YouTube.
Not you as well.
Oh yeah, not you since like 2018-19. I have a lot more interviews on there than you can see. I have a lot of face-to-face interviews with Linda Moulton Howe, Daryl Sims, Nick Redfern, a lot with him, in his home in Arlington, Texas. But yeah, been trying to build up Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, slowly upload some other stuff. Got my Patreon going, but I'm trying to get my website up and going, where just say what the heck, I'm all about freedom of speech. Say what you want to say, let the people decide for themselves. They don't have to agree with you or who I have on the show, but you have the right to speak your mind, speak your truth. And people see what I don't like. I might sound like a broken record to some people that are listening, but with the censorship, we gotta, for the safety of the listeners or the community, blah, 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 blah. No, what you're saying is you think that the community that is watching the video, they're too dumb and ignorant to make up their own mind. You know what I mean?
It's infantilizing us. It's reducing us to the level of misguided children who need some kind of like a patriarchal superstructure just to tell us what to do and to guide us. This is how the state has set itself up now. It's the ultimate nanny state. I mean, the word nanny means some woman who comes in to look after the kids, and this is how they're treating us. They're treating us like little kids. I had a video banned literally just a couple of days ago. My latest upload is all about that. I was doing a video about UFOs actually, and I happened to mention something which is against YouTube's TOS. I happen to mention there's a medical treatment available, but it might contain certain very, very small pieces of machinery. And as a result, the video was yeeted. It's a really old video. It's from 2020, but it was just gone. I didn't bother to appeal it because I knew I wouldn't have a chance.
Didn't you talk about it in one of your recent videos though?
My latest upload is all about that, about how annoyed I am about what they did to me. And they're probably gonna delete more of my videos. They seem to be going through my back catalogue now. And of course, when I say it's not, and there's no people involved. It's all an automated system that's designed to search for certain words and certain phrases, and they make loads of mistakes. I'm appalled by the way YouTube are treating their people. I mean, they're treating us exactly like the government treat us. They're treating us as silly children or people they need to care for. I mean, I think C.S. Lewis mentioned this word about the robber barons and the tycoons, that they're not the danger, because once we know where we stand with them, because they're just greedy. But the real danger comes from the benevolent busybodies who believe they are good people in patronizing us and talking and treating us like we are farm animals and need to have a fence around us because it's for our own good. They see it as it's for our own good. But that in their in their sort of pseudo kindness, they're doing a terrible evil. They're doing a terrible cruelty to us. Just, it's an incredible contradiction. That's what they do.
Like, let's say they take a video down of you, somebody else I'm a fan of, or whatever, and because whatever the community, you know, we care for the community's health and well-being, or whatever they, you know, they say in those that email or in the notification, like that pisses me off, because so you're telling me I'm just too damn ignorant and dumb or whatever to make up my own mind to discern information, you know. Like it's just aggravating. But you need to set up. I don't know if you have a Rumble channel. Do you have a Rumble?
I have. Oh, there's no way you could put all your eggs in the YouTube basket now. No way. No. Actually, I say anyone who's a content creator now, and it is talk about anything other than cat videos and makeup tutorials, you need to get onto BitChute. You need to get onto Odyssey. You need to get on Rumble, and you need to proliferate your output onto these places, which will not censor you. Because even if you don't get videos banned on YouTube, you know, you talk about you're being shadow banned. I know I've been shadow banned because I know exactly when it happened. It was in March 2018. Suddenly, my viewing figures started dropping, and they've never recovered. It's yeah, definitely I'd say to content creators to do that. I hate being treated like this. I was a hospital porter. I was a hospital porter for 23 years. I was in delivery suite, I was in A&E, I was in general lodge, I did refuse, I did specimens, I did everything within that service. I was in, you know, I was part of a life-saving team. I'm not a little kid. I'm not a little child. I'm a lifelong lifesaver. I'm an adult. I'm a grown man. And, you know, I can't bear to be belittled in this way. And I'm sure any other person would feel the same way. And it makes it infuriates me. It really does. And so, but that's why I really pay respect to the old techies who set up Gab and Minds and BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and all these other, and Pill.net. There's so many now. There's a proliferation. There's an absolute plethora of alternative free speech websites where you can say what you want, and because they can't silence us all. That's one little thing about the internet. They can't actually ban the internet unless they do away with interfaces and they stop you linking one computer to another. So they'd have to uninvent computers and get rid of phone lines. It ain't going to happen. So we could fight back, and they can't beat us on this, Michael. They can't. We have to win this one. So I'm really, really happy. That's what makes me really happy.
And I just got a copyright strike on a video from like a couple years ago of music, and like maybe the intro, like I don't see how, because I own the rights. They're not hitting me on other, because I use the same, you know, I had the rights to use. And this was like uploaded like a couple years ago. It's, you know, with Brooks Agnew, the Nephilim imprisoned in the inner earth and the hidden force of the world, you know, and boom. It's like, I get tired of it, man. It's just but the thing is, I know we have to use these tools kind of against the system. I'm still going to use it. Just like my Facebook page. My Facebook page is slowing down a little bit, but it's still my biggest audience. And, you know, I still get per view a lot more than anything else. Like, I think I'm at 275,000 followers on Facebook. I don't know how, but they're hitting me hard now from videos I had like 4 or 5 years ago on like sex trafficking and shit like that, you know? And so now I'm to the dilemma. Do I need to take those down and save them, upload them to, you know what I mean? Like I'm at these crossroads. And then some people, you know, some shills will come on and say, oh, you got a big Facebook page, you know, you must be a shill, or you must be a government agent or something like that, you know. You know how it goes, man.
Yeah. You get these backslappers who just think everyone is a shill. They literally say, I know these people, I call them backslappers. They just accuse everyone of being a shill. But it's a difficult balance, I think, Michael, you know, between knowing that, you know, you could be a false martyr and just fed post all over your mainstream social media and get blocked and get banned completely. But then what would that achieve? What would that be good for your cause? On the other hand, you could just use these platforms until the wheels drop off, knowing that you have these alternatives. Just use them use the tools as best as you can, knowing that you are not dependent on them and there is a backup which is the alt tech community now, which is huge. It's growing to the size where it's almost as big as the mainstream internet. For anyone who has any brains and is willing to look at subjects that are anything other than just banal, because there's a lot of attempt by the states to keep us focused on things of matters of no real importance, away from technical creativity. That's a quote, by the way, from Silent Weapons for a Quiet War. If you've not read that book, it's worth reading.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not working, because otherwise these alt tech sites would be just deserts, and they're not. They're full of people, full of interested people who discover them. And so that's what makes me, that gives me hope, I think. It gives me hope for the future.
So, all right. Something I've been wanting to ask you. Well, first off, you talk about so many things. That's what I love about your research and everything, like Kev on the Kev Baker show, and just other talks and even lectures. You did one at New Horizons, like 10 years, 10. Oh my God.
I think I did a 5 there, yeah.
A lot of that is reminiscent up into what happened in 2020, in a way, but you talk about so many things: the occult, deep, dark conspiracies, the paranormal, ancient mysteries. That's my forte. I like, because you can't just look at one thing. Yeah, I know you got to have some specialists, like Richard Dolan and just UFOs and things like that. I know you got to have some specialists, and there's so many brilliant minds out there. I think it all kind of interconnects like a big jigsaw puzzle, and if you focus on one topic, it's like you're standing in front of a wall. Let's say a mural, a painting, you're standing right in front of it, like right here. But the more topics you dive into, that you're stepping away from that wall and you're getting a better look. You're seeing what this wall is. What is it made of? But something I was wanting to ask you whenever I knew I was going to have you on, something I brought up to maybe Nathaniel Gillis. I have him on usually about once a month, kind of how Kev Baker usually had you on once a month. He's a demonologist. He studies, he believes that there's an occult connection, to UFOs and alien entities and things. So with Aleister Crowley, I know you've talked about him many times in the past. So he did like these rites and these cult rituals and things like that. Back in 2000 or 1918, whenever was it, the flu epidemic or whatever, Spanish flu wiped out. Do you think that there's a connection? Like, do you think I know it's a far fetch, but do you think maybe he was so tapped into this interdimensional force or whatever it is, and these occult seances, these rituals, to where he maybe could have brought about that Spanish flu,
Ooh, well, you're right that it's important to look at all kinds of different things. I'm very much a generalist. Like yourself, I have a wide spread of interests. So in fact, I emailed you and I just said, any particular subjects you want to talk about, and I said, but I'm a jack of all trades.
I meant to email you back. I was getting the baby situated.
No worries, mate. I just thought I'd just ask you but generally, I'm pretty much a generalist. Now, as far as Aleister Crowley goes, I think he was a very significant individual, because he was I think he was very powerful. I think he was in touch with some very, very, very powerful forces, and he was willing to use those for his own benefit. I don't think he was a very sort of like socially conscious person. I don't think he was perfectly interested in bettering the plight of humanity. And he did several things which could have done all kinds of damage. I know personally, I think that he was responsible for the various strange things that's going along on Boleskine House, which this is something that Kev Baker covered many times, and he even went to Boleskine House. It's now burnt down. There's been 2 massive fires there, which have no real known cause.
Is that the one around Loch Ness or no?
Yes. This is a house that was built by the MacLeod clan several centuries ago. Crowley bought it in 1900 to perform the Abramelin working, which is the most powerful magical spell, I think, in existence, which it takes about 5 months to perform. It's a very, very big deal. And he was halfway through doing the spell, and he got a telegram from his solicitor saying that in Paris, saying that the OTO were going to sue him. So his former organization, the Ordo Templi Orientis, were taking him to court. So he dropped everything he was doing, and he just disappeared from Loch Ness and went to Paris to deal with his solicitor. He left the spell unfinished. As a result, he opened a portal at Loch Ness to what he called the Dark Dukes of Hell. But that portal was never shut. As a result, strange things have happened at that location ever since. For example, several engineers went in there to fix the gas boiler. They all ran out screaming from the place, and one of them killed himself. There's like you say, the 2 fires that have occurred there. The second one basically gutted the entire building. There's now a project to rebuild the entire facility and put in new and everything. Basically, it's just the walls of it left. They want to rebuild it and create some kind of hotel there. What I suspect is that portal was opened in 1900 when he was doing the spell, and it's never been shut. And 124 years it will do nothing to prevent that. I mean, it needs to be shut. It needs to be closed. It needs to be exorcised. I set up a Facebook group called Exorcise Boleskine House, although I doubt if there's any magician powerful enough in the world to do that. But I mean, Kev talks about how he witnessed strange phenomena there. He went to the building. He saw that there had been like the fire was unusual. It was more like the spontaneous human combustion. Like it would burn half a room and not the other half. See what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Normal fires don't do that. So whether anything Crowley did was responsible for the Spanish flu, I don't know specifically, but would he be capable of doing something deliberately, probably not deliberately, but inadvertently that could cause the Spanish flu situation? Possibly. At the time the flu broke out, he was living on Sicily at a place called Cefalù, and he actually set up the Thelemic temple there. And he invited Leah Herzig, who was an artist, and several other people went to live there with him. And while they were there, it was just, they took drugs, they had various sexual rituals, and I won't even describe what they were doing there, but it was all kinds of horrible things that were going on there. They had children with them as well. It doesn't bear thinking about. So who knows what they did there? I know for a fact that the building is still there. The Temple of Thelema is still there. Local people won't go near it, so because they're terrified of it. And they're very religious there. They're very religious in that part of the world. But if you go in there, you find old rusty syringes and things like that. You see the murals that Crowley painted on the wall. He was eventually expelled. Mussolini eventually expelled him from the country. But who knows what he did in that time that could have caused untold damage? I mean, he did say, that I gave birth to the 20th century. That was his motto. Oh, it's
even possibly, I don't know what you're, because my thoughts about the phenomena regarding UFOs, aliens, entities, whatever, they kind of they've morphed over the years, changed, day by day, or week by week. It just depends on where I'm at with research and who I talk to, but with I liked how you said that he could have opened up some type of portal,
Yeah.
And we know that, he was doing these rituals and all these dark occult practices. It's just like, in Hollywood, they show things through film, through like predictive programming and things. And does that cast something does that also cast something within our reality? Like almost like a coding, like something that's almost like a certain type of ritual with our subconscious, to where we manifest things into this reality. That's why things seem so chaotic. Like, are we actually manifesting whoever, the Cabal, Deep State, Illuminati, or whoever, the ones that are calling the shots, are we manifesting subconsciously the reality that they want to bring into the world? That's why we have things like COVID, and we have, just chaos after chaos after fear, you know, that we are creating their world.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was it the line from Carlos Castaneda, you know, one of the books about Don Juan, the shaman. He said they gave us their minds. It's like this. I've never forgotten that line. And several people brought this up. They gave us their minds. The predictive programming is undeniable. I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, it can't be a coincidence that you get, for example, Neo in the Matrix, his passport expires on September the 11th, 2001. There's several other references to that date before 9/11 happened. There are references to, I mean, the phrase, I won't say the word, but I'll say Shady Nook. It's a school in Connecticut where something terrible allegedly happened. That appears in several places in cinema. There are several other examples. There are lyrics in songs that have become big hits. There are subliminal messages in various music videos and things like that, and in movies. I think that whoever is doing this, whoever creates these kinds of predictive programming, I think they know deep down, they understand the power of our minds, our subconscious minds, our ability to manifest. And they want us to manifest the world that they want us to experience, the world in which they have complete control, and they build their control more and more and more with every increment that they impose on us. So in a sense, it requires our cooperation. It requires I mean, I think Mark Passio did a brilliant talk about this, where he said they have to give us clues. They have to play a kind of a game with us, a dance in which we dance to the music, that we follow their steps, which is why you have these predictive programming. In a sense, it's a karmic. It reaches karmic energies that almost absolve them of any responsibility. In a sense, we then take on the accountability for what happens to us because they give us clues to what they're going to do, and then we don't stop them. Mark Devlin's latest book is a really, really good book, actually. Of course, the Gift and the Curse.
Oh, I haven't listened to that one yet. I usually in my job I'm able to listen to headphones. That's my form of hearing protection, so I get to listen to like Audible books all day long. I've been wanting.
It's great.
I think that was available on Audible, and I've been wanting to listen to that one. I think I saw it, or at least I know it's available, and I have not read or listened to it yet. But yeah, go ahead, man.
That's great having a job like that, because I've got one similar. I couldn't do that when I was a hospital porter, but I can now. Yeah, I get put earphones in when I'm working. If you're lucky enough to have a job like that, for goodness sake, you know, listen to something interesting while you're
all
working.
day long, man. at least 7 hours a day, like podcast, you know, interviews, Audible books, man. But yeah, go ahead. But anyways, like, but there's something with that, and I meant to tell you, like, if we lose connection, you know, we'll just reconnect, because I've been having, my internet's good. I've been having problems. I don't know. It could be my computer.
Solar storms, you know, we're having solar storms.
I don't know. But anyways, like, I feel like there's something with because why do we have all this chaos, you know? Like, I'm not even touching any of my notes so I just love these organic conversations, you know, because that's why I love how you just talk about anything and everything, you know. But I just wanted to get your take on that, because I feel like, you know, they're using our fear as energy, of course, you know.
Yeah.
But does that energy that we project into the world subconsciously and consciously, you know, by fear and hate and everything else on Twitter and openly, and we feed back to the system, into Monsters Inc., like Monsters Inc., you know, they use the fear of the children to power the city. Are we manifesting their reality that they want, you know? Because it's just something I've been kind of thinking about lately, you know, like, are we actually manifesting their reality, you know, their dystopian future that they want?
I think it does. I think that actual film is extraordinary. If you've not seen it, came out a number of years ago. Children's film, Pixar, you know, but it is actually an extraordinary movie, because it's about some creatures who live in a parallel universe who induce fear in the human population by coming through portals. and they get energy from that. I actually think definitely, Michael, definitely that's exactly what's going on. And everything in our society, everything on our media, everything on our news, everything, all the current affairs that happen in the world seem to be geared towards that. They seem to be focused on that objective of making us scared. I mean, you could argue, and some people will argue, well, that's just the way the world is. That's the way the world happens. But sure, bad things happen in this world. You know, there are natural disasters, there are wars, there are catastrophes, there are economic problems and things like that. But the way they are portrayed in the news, the way they are presented to us, seems to be deliberately intended to make us react in a certain way to these events. If they wanted to, they could easily present a more optimistic picture of these natural, inadvertent events, which would then make us feel better about them and make us feel more positive about them, which I think would help alleviate them. But instead, their objective seems to be to make us as depressed and frightened as possible whenever these things happen. Even the things they don't create, even the things that just happen. And of course, they do create things which make us more depressed and miserable and insecure, and everything's about that. So why do they do that? Why do they want us to be as frightened, as pessimistic, as insecure, and as fearful for the future as possible? Why do they want us to have a vision of the future which is so bleak? There has to be some kind of purpose behind it, I think. It can't just be, well, that's just the way they're like. They're just a bunch of miserable sods, you know.
Mm-hmm.
No, because there are happy people and optimistic people who could get jobs in the media, but they don't. You know, it's something to think about, isn't it? And I reckon, as in Mark's book, you know, they set up this terrorist attack, a false flag terrorist attack in Oxford, where I live, actually, and in the story, the intrepid heroes have to decode the messages that the bad guys are putting in there to prepare for it, which they're putting these messages in there for the reasons we've just discussed, but the good guys decode them to the point where they can actually foil the terrorist attack altogether. And I suppose that's a challenge. That's one of the challenges we face. I mean, if we're in that situation, we detect these things beforehand, or we can simply avoid. We can prevent our spirit being broken. I think that's it. We have to. It's difficult, I know, but we have to maintain a level of. We have to prevent our spirit being broken, which.
Maybe that's what they want, Ben, is they want, if we're in a lower vibrational frequency, you know, we're in a lower, maybe this is just one variable, you know, one ornament on the Christmas tree of tyranny, you know, that they want our frequency lowered, our vibration, because maybe we're more hackable. Maybe these certain players on the global stage, they are in communication with these interdimensional entities or whatever, this malevolent force. It could be archons, and I think it's something to do with the soul, the spirit, the essence of us, what makes us human. They want to keep us from our highest and truest potential, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Because they know that we have the power to create worlds, to build the perfect world that, you know, for our grandchildren to live in and prosper, you know, but instead it's like they're just feeding on the system that they are manufacturing and creating. But despite, like you said, why? Like, yes, that's probably going on, but the reason is why. I think one of the whys is something with a vibrational frequency, the frequencies that we emit from all the chaos magic that they bring into the world. So that maybe it makes us more hackable. If we're on a higher vibrational field frequency, we're not as hackable, maybe. But then what do you mean by hackable? You know, Nigel Kerner believe it's something to do with the souls, you know, that they need the soul. He think it was the grays. I don't know what it is. It could be something even more darker. I don't know, but it's something with the soul, the spirit, the essence of us that they want.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, Aleister Crowley had encounters with the being that he called Lamb, which
Hmm.
looks, he drew a picture of it. It looks very much like a grey. But yeah, I think when we are in a depressed and demoralized state of mind, we are what you would call hackable in the sense that we have our psychic defenses are lowered. It makes it easier for us to be influenced by outside forces that may want to do us harm, may want to do the world harm, or may want control and power and the ability to create the world in their image. And if I think that is, I think, exactly what is actually the plan. To make us hackable, to make us, and it also paralyzes us. It paralyzes us. It makes us despondent, nihilistic. It makes us a lot of. I mean, not everyone, of course. Some people will be galvanized by it. Some people will some people will essentially see it as a challenge and they will resist. But I think that the bad guys they are banking on, based on their own research using psychologists. They have all the top psychologists at their bidding. That the majority of people will simply go limp. They will simply behave like a donkey does. I mean, someone who knows a lot about donkeys will say that, I mean, if you hit them and beat them and cruel to them, and I would never do this experiment because it's really horrible. I think you should be kind to donkeys like you should be kind to every animal. But those who are abused, those who are beaten, to begin with, they will sometimes they'll begin by kicking back, and they'll object, and they'll sometimes bite and things like that. After a while, they'll just flinch and things like that. And then after a long period of abuse, the donkey will become almost robotic. It will do whatever you want it to do. It'll go wherever you take it with the reins or the bridle. But when you hit it and beat it, when it does something wrong, you hit it and beat it, it just won't move. It'll just become more and more pliable and malleable and will bend to your will even more. And I think humans are like that. And I think that the powers that be, they know that a few people will reject their programming and will even resist it, but they're counting on that being a minority. Hopefully they counted wrong, but that's what they want to do. So when you see horrible things happening in the media, for example, when the C word, the disease that spread over the world, a lot of people were, the conspiracy exploded with activity. There were completely new people came into it saying, I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not going to have the treatment, the medical treatment, the V word. I'm not going to have any of these things. And it's imposition by the government. Other people were saying, it was quite frightening to see how many people simply fell into line. Not only did they line up for the V word and to put their mask on and things like that and all these other things, but they then became very aggressive with people who wouldn't. I mean, there's some videos of people attacking those not wearing masks, saying you're not wearing a mask, so you're a bad person for not wearing that mask. You're a danger to me. And they became so animated. There's this woman on a plane who's so angry. The cabin crew, the attendants have to literally they have to pin her down because she's attacking this other person in a seat who's just eating a meal and they have their mask off. It's depressing to see that, because that is exactly the result. That's exactly the result they want. They want to change us into what they want us to be, and they do that by stripping us of all agency through fear, through future shock. That is, there's a pessimistic view of the future, and demoralization, and then they fill our heads with their agenda and make us manifest their agenda, because they know that we can manifest things. We can manifest what we want. They want us to manifest what they want.
And we're just like wild horses, wild horses in nature, beautiful. They're just doing their thing. You can use any kind of metaphor. They're just doing their thing, grazing, but they're like the horse trainer trying to tame us, try to shape us, mold us into their image so that they can straddle us and take us, ride us like a horse, whatever future they want,
Yeah. And as I said, there's different ways of training animals. You can do it through kindness and through your cooperation, as some people who own horses and donkeys do. And in that case, you can have a very, very helpful friend and ally who will be a good companion. But that in that case, their companionship is conditional on you being respectful for them and making them do things which is comfortable for them. Or you could be very, very cruel and you can just simply beat the animal into submission, like I said with the donkey.
That's usually what happens to a pit bull. Like people just have this negative stigma with pit bulls. You know, they're big here in the South, you know, in the States, but that a lot of people had this negative stigma with when it comes to pit bulls, because they think that it's just the bloodline of that. It don't matter what you do to that dog, it's going to bite and kill, and it's going to. No, it goes down to how you treat that animal.
Yeah.
95% of the time, unless that dog has some type of disease or something, wrong with it, 99% of the time, that dog, it boils down to that animal, any animal really, boils down to how you treat it, and it kind of goes, and that's kind of like the microcosm to the macrocosm, like we, on the global stage, but the thing is, we're reacting. We see what's going on in the world, but we're biting back, and we're kind of feeding into the system, but it's not doing any good, we just gotta, I don't know. I guess I want to move forward a little bit, because we can keep on talking about that particular thing. I know my head's going everywhere. That's why I love. But with Aleister Crowley, you brought up Lamb a while ago. What's your take on like the Greys? Because what's your take on the Greys? UFOs and all that. Because really before the 1900s, 1930s, 40s, the gray alien wasn't really into our lexicon yet. It wasn't into our conscious. Do you think that Crowley, he brought that being into our subconscious somehow, maybe through rituals, whatever, with his communications, and then maybe ever since then, that's when we started seeing it in Hollywood started using it, and that's when it kind of became our subconscious. And now everybody's seeing Greys. Do you think that there's a certain type of entity out there, either here in the invisible spectrum or interdimensionally, or both, that it's the same phenomena, whatever it is, it's the same entity, possibly, that's just showing a different mask? It used to be fairies, used to be elves, used to be this and that. Hell, it could possibly even be Bigfoot. I don't know. But do you think it, more than none, it might be the same phenomena, it just shows different mask, and whatever's in the modern day lexicon, that's what we see. What's your take on all that?
It's a tricky question to answer, Michael, because there is the presence of a phenomenon in our culture, and then there's the point where it becomes popular. So, for example, Brian Dunning, the skeptic, claims that gray aliens were basically a non-event until 1977, because this is when the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind was released, and you see the gray type aliens, which have become like iconic in the media. They have been essentially become a popular meme ever since. And he argued that film created those gray aliens. Now, that's not true. I know it's not true because Robbie Graham, a ufologist here in Britain, contacted the production designer of that particular film and said, "Where did you get the idea for those gray aliens?" And he said, "Oh, it's very simple. I phoned up one of the people who has contact with them, and I say, what do they look like?" So, like a lot of Close Encounters, actually, that particular film. So if you've not seen that film, it's very, very interesting, well worth seeing. It's one of my favorite UFO movies. But like a lot of that film, it's actually based on ufological research. J. Allen Hynek even appears in the film. He was a consultant for that particular movie. And as the production designer, actually used other people as consultants, including people who have contact with extraterrestrials. So Dunning has put the cart before the horse here. He has claimed that the close encounters of the third kind created a lot of the ufological mythology, when in fact the opposite is true. That film was based on a lot of ufological data, which was not really popular until that film came out. The film popularized a lot of it. And before that, it was not really a thing that everyone looked at, because it just hadn't reached that critical mass where it appears in the mainstream media. It's like exactly like with Betty and Barney Hill. They were not the first alien abductees. What happened was in 1961, when they had their experience, they then appeared on many TV programs and things like that, and the book was written about them and things like that. You know, the Interrupted Journey, and essentially alien abduction became a kind of popular thing at that point, and it became, a lot of people were talking about it, and it appeared in the news and talk shows and newspapers and magazines and things like that. But people were being abducted by aliens before Betty and Barney, and indeed decades, maybe centuries before Betty and Barney. It's just nobody talked about it. And I think the Greys are very, very similar. I actually don't think that Crowley created the Grey cultural phenomenon. I don't think he did. I think he had an encounter with the Grey phenomenon. But I personally think the Greys have been interacting with us, whatever they might be, have been interacting with us before and since. And that different events within the media have popularized them, yet the phenomenon has been the same all the way through. So, for example, Greys can be seen in much older reports than Crowley. In fact, a lot of the fairies, you mentioned the fairies being spirited away by the fairies and things like that. A lot of the descriptions of the beings, the fairies, the beings that take people, whether it's from the deepest, darkest jungles of the Amazon or the remote west coast of Ireland, people describe being spirited away by the fairies in the Middle Ages by creatures who were very, very similar. And indeed, there are cave paintings in South Africa that are thousands of years old. They're probably 10 to 20,000 years old, that depict what we would call Greys, beings, aliens. There's even like flying saucers from cave paintings. So
the Aboriginals in Australia with the Wagina also.
Yes, I was literally just thinking about that. Great minds, Michael. Yes, I was just thinking about that. The Waginas, I mean, they actually even appear at the Australian Parliament, has like a mural of them. I've been there. It's interesting. And Mary Rodwell, who's an Australian lady, has talked about this. She studies encounters. So I think we're dealing with something ubiquitous, something which has been a part of the human experience for probably as long as we've been human beings. And whatever it is, it's probably been with us on this planet in physical form or spiritual form, probably both, for that amount of time. And I say physical form because unlike visions of various kinds, these beings do seem to have a physical presence. They will leave footprints. At places like Virginia and Brazil, they will leave behind footprints. When they die, they leave behind a corpse. So they have a physical presence. At the same time, they also have this etheric element to themselves. You know, people report them appearing and disappearing. They come through. Linda Napolitano reports that they came through a solid wall. Things like that. You know.
What do you think the over the 60,000 foot view is with what we're looking at? Like I brought up Nigel Kerner earlier, he thought, that they were, and he was over there where you live somewhere, that they were robotic in nature. I don't know, androids, whatever. And now Daryl Sims, also, who I've interviewed in person and podcasts many times, he thinks that, they were very robotic in nature and they were made, hatched, and manufactured. But what's your take on the Grey phenomena? And, like I said, with Nigel Kerner, he thought that they needed the soul to evolve into other, but what's your take on the whole phenomena? I know that's a overwhelming type of question because there's so many different facets, but if you had to sum it up, what would you say the overarching agenda is behind the phenomena?
It's hard to say because, like all extraterrestrial encounters, the beings that are encountered are very varied. I mean, there's many different species. They seem to have a very wide range of physical appearances. They appear to come from many different habitats. They exhibit very different behavior and very a wide variety of behavior, and they seem to have many different agendas. There's virtually a taxonomy now of species that people encounter all over the place, which indicates their reality. In terms of the Greys specifically, there's no one answer to that question. What you do find, though, is that people encounter beings like we would call the Greys, and the Greys themselves vary. Some are scaly, some are very big, tall, some are very short. What you find is with these beings, Whitley Strieber and other people have talked about this idea that they appear to be emotionally cold. There's no real drive to them. There's nothing. They appear to be soulless. Maybe that's the wrong word, soulless. But the idea that they are robotic in nature is a recurring theme, and some people
or more hive-minded.
Hive-minded, yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost as if they are essentially an extension of the will of other beings, rather like our own automata and robots that we create. And as humans, we create mechanical robots and automata. Maybe these are similar, but they were created by different means through biology. It could be that. But the idea, I mean, it's not universal, but that is a recurring theme. They are mindless. They are essentially acting out a program. That does recur over and over again in literature. There are exceptions, but that is one of the things that I recur. So it could be that Daryl and Nigel are right. I mean, I've met Daryl Sims, and he's an interesting chap, actually. He knows an awful lot about he studied the taxonomy issue an awful lot, I'd say.
Could they be more, like with a biblical view, like the Watchers, and then with Zecharia Sitchin, could the Watchers actually be the Gigi that Zecharia Sitchin talked about, because if they are abducting us and studying us and analyzing us, taking samples, then why? Or, is that part of the watching over humanity? It makes you wonder how far back the phenomenon actually goes, with the Grey phenomenon.
Definitely. I mean, I'd say that probably in ancient times, people were aware of this. As I said, this is so old. This goes back such a long way. And the Bible and other texts from that period do describe encounters between beings of another world and humanity, interactions of various kinds. The Anunnaki, those who came down from heaven to earth, that's how it translates in Sumerian, which Sitchin talks about, are a good example. They occur in other mythologies such as Egyptian, also Native American, such as the Incas and the Aztecs and the Mayas. And in the Bible, there's that famous line in the Bible, I think it's from chapter 12, Genesis, the sons of the Elohim, the sons of the Elohim, the Nephilim, the sons of the Elohim saw the daughters of men, saw that they were fair, and took of them many wives, who gave them many heirs, who became the wise men of renown. They became the Nephilim. That implies, well, basically, extraterrestrial interactions with humans on a biological level, hybridization, to create a bloodline that is maybe a royal bloodline, elite bloodline. I mean, it's impossible to say, but isn't it extraordinary that kind of mythology you can find all over the world? You can find it everywhere. I mean, it's
this even kind of with the reptilian.
Yeah.
The reptilian motif, goes way back also.
There is a statue, and it's literally just less than a mile from where I'm sitting right now. There's a statue in Magdalen College, Oxford, which was put up over 500 years ago, and it appears to be a humanoid reptilian. And it stands in that college, in this famous college where many great minds have been trained over the centuries. And I actually went on a tour there, and I asked the tour guide, he says, "What are these things?" And he said, "We're not entirely sure," he said. "We believe they're connected to heraldry. That is coats of arms and things like that, crests. But the sculptor is unknown, and we don't know exactly what they're doing there." And I thought, blimey, right in the heart of Oxford, we have a reptilian humanoid. Ben Fairhall, a British researcher, first spotted this, and I actually went and checked it out, and it's true. It's there. So the humanoid reptilian figures appear all over the place. They appear in the mythology of ancient ancient America. You could even see carvings on some of the places in like Cusco and places like that, where there are like reliefs, carvings of reptilian humanoids. They appear in southern Africa in their tradition, and they appear in India. The Naga cult worshipped like this. You see serpent people, cross between the snake and the human. It seems inconceivable that the different people from different cultures from across the world, thousands of miles apart, who had no contact at all since basically we came down from the trees, would come up with exactly the same mythological templates. There's only two possibilities. Firstly, the human brain is designed, it has evolved to create certain images under certain states of consciousness, and that itself requires extraordinary explanation. You need some kind of explanation for that. The alternative is that what these mythologies and these visions and these experiences represent is something that is objectively real, and I think that's far more likely.
But
Can I plug my book?
yes, and everything's going to be in the description, and I'm going to put your website also on the bottom. What's your website? Your
Hapanwo, HPANWO. Hospital Porters Against the New World Order. Yeah.
Awesome. But yeah, go ahead and plug your book right now, and then I'm going to tell you what I was going to tell you just a moment.
Cool. Well, if anyone, I discussed this on my website and many other places. I've also written a book here, Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, and it's got 2 sequels as well, the Roswell trilogy, available at all good bookshops now, priced £10. So please do check those out. Indulge yourself with that particular reading material. If you enjoy Michael's show, I think you'll like that book.
And hopefully I can get, maybe not once a month, every month, but hopefully I can get you more on frequently, maybe once every other month, because man, you just talk. I just love how you just dive in so much material. And I like having those conversations about trying to connect different things, different topics together, but with what we're talking about with the reptilians. So one of my coworkers, he was a missionary, and he had friends that was a missionary, and used to travel the world. And one of his friends, they went to Africa, and they were some village in Africa, and they went into this village, and there was a tent that there was a woman that was possessed. If I'm trying to remember correctly. She was possessed, and they were going to pray over her and all that. That's what they said. She needed an exorcism, or she was demons in her and things like that. And anyways, he went into this tent where this woman was. And this is coming from the guy that told me this woman had scales falling off of her. Scales. She was speaking in some weird type of language, and almost like speaking in tongues almost, but it is different. It was unrecognizable language. Even the villagers didn't know what it was, and she had scales just falling off of her. How creepy is that, man? You know what I mean?
Very.
And then another one real quickly. It kind of goes along with the reptilian scheme, I guess. And I think it was South Africa. The same guy with this South America. I think it was South America. It could have been Africa, but I think it was South America. Went to another village, and they, trying missionaries and all that. And there was a boy that needed help, that they was going to pray over him. He seemed to be possessed and all that. And they're going to pray over him. And the boy started choking, and whenever they're praying over him, and I don't know how this is coming from what I was told. He had a snake inside of his throat, a little tiny snake inside of his throat. And they asked the mom did you know that was there? Pull it out. She refused to touch the snake because if I take the snake from him, it's going to get into me and take over me. The gods want my child to be, but I wish I'd have wrote this or recorded what this guy told me, but that's basically, I don't want to say anymore because I would be making, but I do remember that, what he told me about that. It's weird, man. It's so creepy. It's like certain cultures, like, did these reptilian gods, or could they have been Anunnaki, the reptilians, that came down and just through over time, some of these small villages kept some of these almost like a cargo cult, like that they kept these traditions going and to almost praise and give homage to these ancient gods.
It's hard to say. I mean, in the first case you mentioned, I mean, the human skin can become scaly. I mean, there's something called ichthyotic eczema, which I've actually suffered from, where your skin, I mean, I had it on my inside of my elbows and on my knees, and and on my here on my my forearms here, where my skin became dry and scaly, and it was actually itching terribly. It's horrible. It's really unpleasant because it itches and it feels really, sometimes it bleeds. That can happen. So a skeptic, I suppose, if I was playing skeptic's advocate, I'd say that could be what that lady was suffering from. However,
he said it was more like a fish scale.
It could be the story about the snake in the throat from South
America. I don't know how that will work. You know what I mean?
That's weird. That's very strange.
The first thing I thought of was like Stargate SG-1. You know what I mean? Where
I mean, you can't like if you swallow a snake, it'll either go into your stomach where it'll just die. And
I don't know how that works.
It'll come out and it'll choke you, and it comes out. But I mean, a snake in the I mean, that to me sounds like maybe a metaphor for some kind of possession.
Maybe
that's what it sounds like to me. Because a snake cannot like just sit in your throat. Our throats have evolved to be basically a one-way street. Things go into your stomach to eat, and if anything gets stuck there, you have like a gag reflex to throw. You'll throw up if necessary to get them out. So it sounds to me like a metaphor for possession of some kind, demonic possession, and this. It's interesting how many cultures associate reptiles with this possessive force. You see it everywhere, like we've just been talking about how, and I don't know why, because why reptiles? Why not chimpanzees? Why not goats? Why not dolphins? And it's weird how reptiles come up again and again and again, as if these beings resemble reptiles in some way.
Yeah, it's wild. I guess the last remaining time that we have, the next 20, 25 minutes or so, let's dive into your new book a little bit.
Well, I mean, it's the book Roswell Rising, a Novel of Disclosure, is something I wrote I started writing in 2015, and it was because I listened to Steve Bassett. And I don't know if you've had him on your show yet. He's a great guy.
Back in 2010, I did.
You did. Oh yeah, he's been going for ages, and he's been doing this for so long. But he said, what would have happened in the Roswell incident? What would have happened if the original Roswell story, that is the first media news, the news scoop, that is, RAF captures flying disc. What if that had been the prevailing story instead of, it's a weather balloon? And they made a big mistake, which of course was a complete cover-up. We know, we're looking back now, we know it's a cover-up. It was a complete cover-up. What if the original story had been maintained? And I thought to myself, that's really interesting, because I thought, well, what would the world be like? I mean, and Steve said, this is a possible theme for an alternative history story. And I'm being a novelist, being a writer, I thought to myself, well, because Steve actually said in this interview, he says, well, I don't think I'll ever write this thing. I don't have, I can't write books, and I don't have time and things like that. But I hope someone writes it one day. And I thought, well, why don't I do it? Because I'm a writer of fiction. I wrote 2 novels before. I've written numerous short stories. And so I wrote to Steve, and because I know Steve, I've interviewed him a number of times. I says, Steve, I'll write that book. I'll write that book for you. And he says, great. He was very encouraging. So I got to work, and the book appeared, Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, which is about that. It's about what would happen if we actually, the truth was told to us back in 1947 about what happened. How would things, what would be different? What would be the same? What would be the reaction? And indeed, this led to 2 other books that followed straight afterwards, called Roswell Revealed, A World After Disclosure, and Roswell Redeemed Humanity After Disclosure. Together, I call them the Roswell Trilogy. They're £10 each at good bookshops if you want to buy them. I mean, they're paperback only. I don't do Kindle and things like that. Too easy to edit, too easy to delete. Right. So you have to get them as paperback. Sorry, guys. But I cover in these books. I let my imagination run wild, and I let my analysis of and speculation about what the world would be like, not the way the world is, but what would it be like in that sort of parallel universe. And I think I cover an awful lot of subjects, actually. It goes beyond the UFO issue. It goes into the conspiracy. It goes into the New World Order and the deep state and things like that.
Do you think that possible future could have led to disclosure with, like, maybe some of these technologies, like even like I showed you, with the cancer, cancer conspiracy, even cures for that. That's just one facet of these technologies that could possibly have been revealed.
I include that in the book. Yeah, I include that in the story. Yeah, the idea of I go into medication. I go into so many different angles on the book, and the message of the book is basically, this is not what actually happened. This is a kind of meta universe. It's an imaginary universe of what would have happened, but what happens in the book could happen now. Better late than never. So even though there's been a massive 76-year delay, we could still have disclosure. We could still have the revelation that came out in the Roswell incident, that Roswell Army Air Force captures flying disc. Yeah, the main character in the first novel is actually the guy who wrote that story for the Roswell Daily Record. Who I don't know who it really was, but in my imagination, I actually put him down as the main character. He wrote that story for it. Yeah,
it's kind of badass. Can't wait to actually get the books.
I'll send you a signed copy, mate. I'll send you, and anyway, and if you listen to Michael's show, you'll love those books. You really will.
Hell yeah! So, what about what do you think? Because there's been a lot of talks, man, I don't know, who was it? I forgot his name, with the Project Bluebeam and all that, the fake alien invasion.
Oh, Serge Monast.
Yes, that's it, Serge Monast. Well, what do you think? Are they going to try to bring something like that down the road, or do you think that's just that's kind of like some kind of, I guess you could say, UFO community type lore that, that's almost like an actual conspiracy, within the UFO community but what do you think will actually happen? Do you think that the governments of the world will actually reveal what's going on behind the scenes, with certain, I guess you could say, true disclosure? Because if I remember correctly, you didn't, on the Kev Baker show, you didn't really think that the 2017, New York Times, that was really disclosure. The capital D disclosure, that everybody talked about, because so many people just jumped on board thinking that, this is it. We need congressional hearings, but I don't think we're going anywhere with that. I don't think that's disclosure.
Now, I don't want to brag again, but I do in the first novel, Roswell Rising, I do address this issue about the fake, about how a disclosure could then be subverted by some kind of fake incident that could happen. There could be some fake story could be superimposed on top of it. I do address that in the first book. Kev and I discussed this many times during the many interviews I gave him, and I think he took a more cynical attitude than I did. However, I think there may be some truth to what he said and what you said as well. And it's a bit of a tricky situation because I think we have to cut a balance between excessive cynicism and excessive naivety. We have to kind of tread a narrow passage between those two extremes, because obviously I don't want to be taken in by some kind of government psyop. But at the same time, if this is a push for deliberate, real willing disclosure, which is a possibility, it's an opportunity we can't afford to miss.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is that the government would play the last card. I mean, Carol Rosin said this at the 2001 Disclosure Project press conference in Washington, D.C. The last card would be that they would say there are evil aliens out there. And she was citing Wernher von Braun, something he said in the late 70s, shortly before the end of the Cold War, because he predicted the Cold War would end within a decade, and he was right. When Gorbachev got into power in the Soviet Union, that was kind of like it marked a turning point in the geopolitical agenda. So would they do that? I mean, if it could be that the government want to create some kind of tyrannical state, some kind of tyrannical global state. Now they can't just do it. They can't do that unless they have some kind of pretext. And they've tried many ways to do this. They've said, well, we need a world of greater internationalism and greater authoritarianism, because we have a danger out there we need to protect you from. And this is what 9/11 was all about. This is what I think the C word disease was all about. That's the latest incarnation of that. There's been many others. If they really wanted to go double or quits and they were desperate, would they say, well, there are bad aliens out there, like in the film Independence Day? There are nasty aliens out there, and we know about it. We didn't tell you. Sorry about that, but it was necessary because of the security issue, which would get them off the hook, wouldn't it? It would get them off the hook in another way, because then they wouldn't have to explain to us why they lied to us for 76 years, which is I'm sure that's at the back of their minds right now. So they'll say that, and then they'll say, well, in order to defeat this extraterrestrial menace, we need to come together as one. There'll be all kinds of soapy rhetoric associated with it. Let us unite. Let us stand side by side. And it'll be all very, very emotional. What the upshot will be, they'll want to create a world government, a dictatorial world government, an international state of emergency to save the world from the extraterrestrial menace. Temporary, of course. And then, when the aliens are defeated, the power we have taken from the people, we will return to the people. Promise. Honest. Trust us. And of course, so many devastating reforms and sad episodes in nations' histories across the world have begun with that. We need to protect you from an alien menace. This was the burning of the Reichstag. This was USS Liberty. This was the Gulf of Tonkin incident. This was, there's so many I could tell you. 9/11, of course. It goes back to like the USS Maine in Cuba. That started the Spanish-American War, incidentally. And it was only after that war that people realized there was no evidence at all for the bomb being the responsibility of Spanish agents. And it goes on and on and on. It's just like, and so what Serge Manasse discovered, this Canadian journalist, he discovered that the government had been developing ways to project realistic images in the sky, realistic visions that would look like real solid objects in the sky. And to be honest, this is actually possible because I've seen it done. There's many ways of doing this. You can use a laser projector actually to create a very realistic image in thin air. I've seen it. I've seen it in Thorpe Park, this theme park, where all you need basically this laser projector with a computer controls the image and how it's created, and you need some kind of medium, which would just be a cloud of smoke. It could be a cloud of smoke or a cloud of steam, and you could project onto that a very realistic looking three-dimensional image, a solid looking object. And that could be done on a very large scale in open air. Yes, it could. So there's nothing science fiction about this. There's nothing, Monast is completely and utterly, he's not I mean, he wasn't speculating at all about what he did. Apparently he was arrested and he ended up in jail for a short time. Then he died of a heart attack, apparently.
And
like so many do.
And just like, what was it, about 10 years ago or so, with the hologram of Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that. Yeah.
Yeah. This, and that's that's available to the public, how real that is, and makes you wonder what's actually going on in these deep black projects, makes you wonder how far advanced are they in comparison to what's actually available to the public.
Yeah, I mean, some people might say, well, of course they can create images of people who've died because you just do it using CGI on an AI on a computer screen, and you can put them in a movie. But in this case, this was a stage, wasn't it? It was actually a theatrical event with a live audience, in which a hologram of Michael Jackson, several years after he died, was seen dancing on the stage, and people said how realistic it was.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, absolutely. This can be done in the open air. I mean, of course, as you said, in secret government technology is far more advanced. But to be honest, you could use publicly available technology to create such an illusion in thin air, and all you'd have to do is scale it up. So you could create what might look like giant flying saucers in the sky, like in the film Independence Day.
Or, Ben, use these holograms that in the sky, and then they use it as a decoy, these fake ships or whatever, as a decoy, and they actually blow up the White House, or they blow up some type of building, like some type of false flag event. Like, that would be real, but the hologram would make us think that it's coming from these ETs.
It would need to be shocking. It would need to have simply showing images in the sky wouldn't be enough. You need to have either alien reproduction vehicles flying around, fake UFOs, or holographic projections. But either way, something bad would have to happen on the ground level to shock people. In the book, I mean, it's a spoiler, but in the book, they blow up the Empire State Building, and then they say it's the aliens did it. And it would be something like that. It would cause terrible death and destruction. But I think the people behind this New World Order agenda are really not concerned about human welfare. They'll kill millions if they have to achieve their aim.
And that kind of goes to the Deagle, that website that I think they took down. Remember that the Deagle site where it had like the world's population, where I'm thinking 2025 it goes down dramatically with certain countries, especially the US.
Oh, yeah.
And that.
Yes, I mean, how do they predict that? Because I mean, all like the UN population graph is said to go up for a couple more decades. It's said to stabilize, and
I think it's some highly advanced AI type of algorithm. Probably some type of AI that isn't available to the public. It's probably some kind of deep DARPA type AI algorithm or something that is predicting these models.
Why are they so sure in 2025 the population is going to drop? I mean, it's horrible, but a lot. I can't say too much because I know you want this to be on YouTube, but 3 or 4 years ago, a lot of people were taking a medication, which maybe have agents. Maybe it has agents in it, will affect their life expectancy. I mean, and it's sad because my members of my family have taken this, and it's horrible to think about it. I tried to tell them not to, but they weren't interested. They didn't believe me. Is that it? Is that why? If it's seen as the website's been taken down, it could be that's the reason.
What do you think, if you had to make a prediction with, if you kind of make like some type of forecast of what we're going to be facing down the road, because, there's a lot of talks with the Great Reset, 2030 and 2045, 2050. Is the road gonna be bumpy for us? Are they going to try to make some nuclear type of event or what? Well, what do you foresee down the road, Ben?
Well, I think that the bad guys will do anything they can. The deep state, Illuminati, whatever you want to call them, they will do anything they can to achieve their new world order. However, I don't want listeners or viewers to get depressed or despondent, because it's pretty clear that they are struggling. They're struggling right now to do what they do. They have changed their plans numerous times. They have taken enormous risks in the last few years to do what they do. They've fiddled with the political process. They've introduced diseases and cures, supposed cures. They have pummeled us with some of the propaganda they pummeled us with is so ridiculous that anyone can see through it, which indicates to me a level of desperation on their part. I don't know what the future is. I don't know how this is going to end, but I think we've got reason to be hopeful. I don't know exactly what the way is out for the free human beings of this world, but there has to be some way out, and we will discover it. Because if there was no way out, they would just be sitting back and laughing, and they'd be strolling along, and they're not. They're not. They are worried. They're concerned. Their great work of ages is in trouble. So I'd like to say to anyone watching this program, don't give up, don't lose heart, don't despair, because I think we're on the winning side. The means of achieving our victory are not known yet, but I think we don't necessarily have to know how this is going to end or how we are going to move forward. All we have to know is that the potential is there for us to do so, and the answers will come to us. They're there. We have to have faith in the positive forces in this universe to deliver the answers of how we move forward. Our job, our duty, is to look out for those answers, and when they emerge, to act on them.
Mm-hmm. I think one possible scenario will be like some type of, false flag event or manufacturer event, maybe like an internet kill switch, because people will panic. You can't get on TikTok, Twitter, some kind of internet kill switch, and it could be some type of false flag type of cyber hack or something, and where maybe it ties into the internet, and they kill it for a certain amount of time, however long, and it ties into the electrical grid, and where I think that will cause a lot of panic, and then that will be, we'll ask for solutions. That's the problem, reaction, solution, then that would be the problem. And then they will get a reaction from us. And like, when did it do something? We can't do this. We went without internet or TikTok, Twitter, for so long. And then we lost power, blah, blah, blah. So give us we need something, Mr. Big Brother. And then they will provide the solution: more control, more this, more that, more lockdown with our freedoms,
They'll try something like that. I mean, it's quite likely it may be something very extreme. I mean, the film Leave the World Behind is well worth seeing, because it's about that. I mean, it's about a family that go off on a seaside holiday, and they suddenly find out that the entire communications infrastructure breaks down, and all other kinds of weird things happen, which indicates there's some kind of mass takeover of the world. That could happen, and then someone will come forward and say, "Well, here's the solution," and it'll be something very extreme. I mean, and I think that's why people like us are very important, because when this happens, our job is to analyze that and detect these anomalous, and detect these suspicious elements, and tell people about it. Tell as many people as possible, because if enough people know about it, it won't work. It doesn't have to be the majority; it just has to be a critical mass of people. Could be like 10% of people. If they don't go along with it, then it won't work. This is what happened on 9/11. I mean, the conspiracy sphere did a really, really good job on 9/11 when it happened. They immediately started looking into it and saying, is the official story true? Is it bin Laden and these 19 guys? Did they really do this? And straight away, it became very clear that doesn't make sense. And those people immediately started publishing books. They started creating websites. They started doing lectures and tours, and people like that. People like Dr. Judy Wood and David Ray Griffin and David Icke and people like that, they immediately started reanalyzing and reassessing the event. And I think they reached enough people to the point where that whole agenda broke down. And so if and when, I'd say when, because we have to be prepared, this will happen. These guys won't go quietly. we have to be prepared that when our enemies make a move, we have to be ready for them, and we have to counteract immediately in exactly the same way. And I think we're in a much stronger position now. We have a much more sophisticated internet. I think we have a much more aware population. I think that the backlash of 2020 and the pandemic, I think that backfired. I think this is why they sort of hard stopped it in the end of 2021, because they realized it wasn't working.
That's why I don't
So
know if they will do another pandemic.
I think that's a bit kind of a old hat, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think they'll use their imaginations a little bit more.
Well,
It may well be.
They have
exactly
been
what
talking
we've been
about They have been talking about, like, cyber attacks and all that.
Mm.
It could be with the electrical grid, the internet, and then the only thing will be left is more control and taking a lot of websites down, and you only have Amazon, eBay, YouTube, but that would be highly censored, and they'll be calling us radicals. They got to take these websites down, because it could be, some of these websites could be harbingers of these cyber attacks. So
they're already doing that.
I know
they're already like dragging people through courts, like Alex Jones. They're already dragging people like Richard D. Hall and Alex Jones through the courts because of their opinions. Oh yeah, that could well be it. I mean, there was a news story just a couple of days ago, actually, that the Chinese have been hacking the Ministry of Defence here in the UK. It may well be something like that. It'll be blamed on some boogeyman, and then they will say, well, the solution is let's get an international state of emergency. Let's come together and defeat the bad guys. And of course, the bad guys are the people who created the problem in the first place, the real bad guys. And so, yeah, I mean, I suppose whatever they come up with, and they will be trying to come up with some kind of scenario that we won't be able to exploit. And our challenge, I think, is to find a way to exploit. Our challenge as freedom fighters is to find a way to expose what was going on, take it apart, analyze it, find the anomalies, and publish that, I think. And they can't stop us altogether. I mean, like I said, there's always ways of creating computer networks that will prevent censorship. There's the dark web and things like that if necessary. There's always ways and means.
Yeah,
they didn't stop in the past. Once the printing press was invented, that was really the end of complete government control, because even long before the internet, there were pamphleteers and people like that. And so, yeah, so I feel positive. I think we should be hopeful.
I think we're going to come out, victorious, in the end, but it's going to be trials through fire, though, but
yeah,
if you just look at the past, if you look at the trends of this, with these guys, what's been going on, you have the swine flu, what was it, 09, 10, something like that. And then, so from that point, for about 10 years up into 2020, it was all about what led up, they put into our subconscious with, every now and then with fears of, vaccines and fears of this, with viruses, and we will see China always wearing masks and things like that. But a lot of and then the Bill Gates thing that they had 16 or 17, was it 201 or whatever, event 201 or
event 201. Yeah, that was the drill. Yeah.
And then they just brought these things into the lexicon, into our subconscious, kind of getting us prepared. And then boom, actually a big one happening about 10 years later, from when it kind of somewhat started with the swine flu 10 years earlier, roughly. And then if you look now, the past, if we look at it, it's like almost like a 10-year plan until something happens almost. And if you look the past 5 years, a little longer than that, but roughly the past 5 years, a lot of talks about the cyber attacks. And, so it makes you wonder, we have another within maybe 5 more years, something may happen. I don't know. These people, there's a trend with these players, there's almost like almost, if you look at these, if you study the past, you'd almost analyze and see what the next move on the chessboard is going to be. You'd almost see, especially if you study the trends of these players, these global players. And that's why I just think maybe something with some type of cyber something, because they just been talking a lot about that on and off. they don't beat the drum too much, but on and off they keep bringing it up, and so it seems like there's like this 10-year thing almost, and it's like maybe that will be some type of false flag event eventually, because what is keeping them from their plan? It's the internet. It's basically it's the internet. Communication through the internet, and they need to take that away from us, except for like Amazon and Facebook and YouTube and things like that.
They're certainly doing that. I mean, you mentioned your own shadow banning. I've had videos removed. I've been shadow banned. Yeah, they're already doing that. They're trying to suppress free speech online. Definitely, they're basically, people who are prominent in the world of the conspiracy are facing legal attacks. Sometimes it's these these like very litigious little paramilitaries who will take them into court because they're offensive or something. Sometimes they will literally pass laws through the state directly to suppress opinions. The online harms bill, for example, that's going through Parliament here in Britain. Other times they'll just use this outsourced lawfare. They'll use whatever will work. But it's obvious they are doing. It's obvious that we're right when we say that there are secrets that they don't want us to know, that they are taking steps to prevent us from accessing this information. I mean, if we were wrong, they wouldn't bother. Why would they care? Why don't they just let us rant at the air and like street corner preachers? Why are they going to so much effort to silence us? This to me is as good as a confession.
Well said, Ben. Man, guess we're going to end it right there. Man, I appreciate you coming on Beyond Forbidden. I can't wait to go deeper down some rabbit holes in the future. Pick that brain of yours, maybe touch on some more things that you discussed over the years, especially knowing Kev Baker. You've just talked about so much material, maybe diving more into your books. But yeah, man, Ben, thank you very much, man. It's a treat, honor, and privilege.
Oh, you too, Michael. It's been great to be on your show. Thanks for inviting me. It's been really, really good to talk. I'm glad to come back anytime.